It's not just limited to, unfortunately, like crazy people on the internet. We get some of our leaders doing that as well. We get some of our leaders doing that, like Mark Harlan, the athletic director at Utah, who seemed to really buy into that with his comments after the game. And man, it's really just unfortunate. I think what he did, it was just a bad look for Utah, first of all. Not a bad look for the Big 12 at all. A bad look for Utah. It really vindicated the way that Big 12 fans have felt about Utah since they entered the league. And it gave you a peek behind the curtain where you say, all right, well, that's where all this is coming from. Look, if their leader, the guy that runs the entire athletic department, is going to act like this, of course the fans are going to act like this too. And I would tell you the other thing that we really learned from Mark Harlan's little tirade was, I think there's some legitimate fear about where Utah football is headed, and everything that has happened in the last 2 years, culminating in this disaster of a season for Utah, is spilling out. I think you're seeing some of that spill over, and that's a part of what happened there. So I would imagine most of you that are here are pretty well aware of what happened, but just in case you're not, and if you want to dive into it a little bit more, I guess, as I mentioned, I'll start with the Zapruder film here. But last drive of the game, BYU down by 2, 4th and 10. They are in the shadow of their own goal line. And it looks like Utah gets a sack to end the game until a flag comes out for holding. So the holding call, people look at it from the typical angle that you would see, but we also got some other angles here. So if you want to look at it, just for the record, everybody. Oh, wow. Pardon the Sports Center anchor in the background. There's one angle, there's another. You can definitely see some kind of grab in there. The receiver getting yanked down. It drags the shoulder down a bit. So I would tell you, to me, that definitely meets the minimum threshold for holding. I think the alternate angles are very important there in all of this. Mark Harlan did not think so. Kyle Whittingham did not think so. I would guess that most fans in the position of Utah fans in the moment would be very upset about that call. I understand the frustration. It is such a consequential, massive moment in the game that to see that where it's not something completely obvious, especially when you're only looking at the first angle that the broadcast had, I get how you look at that and you are pissed. Understood. It reminds me a lot of the Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, right? Where you had that was Juju Smith-Schuster that got held, I believe. Reminds me a lot of that, where you're like, look, it's pretty clear when you start looking at the angles, like there is a hold there. It's not the most egregious thing in the world. And so if you are someone that subscribes to the idea of, hey, in that situation with the game on the line, call felonies, not misdemeanors, I think you'd look at that and say that's much more misdemeanor than felony. So if that's how you think and that's how you feel, like, okay, we can have that discussion. But that is not a call that is so bad and so egregious that it is worth losing your credibility over. And that's what I feel like Mark Harlan and, some of the Utah fan base, but they're fans. That's one thing. I would expect that from the fans. What you don't expect is for an athletic director to come take the mic and drop comments like he did, which we're going to play right now. Again, I would imagine that most of you have already heard this, but let's hear it again. Mark Harlan stepping up there and taking everybody by surprise in the heat of the moment after the game with this.
This game was absolutely stolen from us. We were excited about being in Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game. Someone else stole it from us. Very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This was not fair to our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight. Thank you.
Whew. All right. So the game was stolen from them. Mark Harlan says the game was stolen from them, and he was happy and excited about being the Big 12, but he is not as of last night. That is about as strong as you can get, and not something that I can recall ever seeing from an athletic director. Sometimes you'll see a coach do something like that. Every once in a while, you'll see a coach totally lose it, which again, I feel like is a little bit more understandable because the coach is much more bullets flying, heat of the battle, right there, more heavily invested, and just a little more. Your coach is going to be a little more juiced up, rah-rah kind of guy. The athletic director, you've got to be somebody with poise. You're making big picture strategic decisions about an entire athletic department. You've got to have a little bit more poise than kind of the meathead coach figure here, right? That's why you usually don't see it from an AD like that, but we got it. We got it from Harlan. We even got it a little bit from Kyle Whittingham. I will say, now this apparently was made on like the radio broadcast, so it's a little more of a friendly environment, a little more, if you're going to be strategic about it and do something like this, a better place to do it. But also saw this, Kyle Whittingham on the Utah postgame show said, I wish it would have come down to the play on the field. Now, Doc Holliday nails it. It did. It did. You scored 0 points in the second half, Kyle. You scored 0 points in the second half. Your program has been reduced to way overly reliant on one seventh-year quarterback this year. You got to figure something better than that out, man. So I don't like that comment either, but I am more understanding of it coming from a head coach. The athletic director to come out and as emphatically do what Mark Harlan did, you can't do it. So let's start with all the problems with this. Why I think this is bad. Why I think this shows cracks in the armor in what's going on at Utah, more so than the 5-game losing streak that they're on has shown. But if you start doing this, it's very easy for anybody to come back and say, well, what about this play? What about this play? We can go through the entirety of the game and look at other plays that also very much affected the outcome, right? This play, Kyle Whittingham and Mark Harlan would argue the hold added 3 points to the score. That gave BYU 3 points. Well, let's look at one that you can certainly argue gave Utah 7 points in the first half. This was called a face mask. Okay? This is clearly not a face mask. You get the reverse angle here. It's not a face mask. He's being taken down by the shoulder pads. That winds up keying a Utah touchdown drive. Okay? So first of all, when you go do something like that, Mark Harlan, you are entering a slippery slope where somebody can very easily come in and say, what about XYZ call? What about XYZ play? So, again, one of those two calls helped determine a field goal. One of them led to a touchdown. So we can already argue that the net there is that Utah wins if we're just limiting it to those play calls. Second of all, you got to look in the mirror. You know, the other thing I hate about it, like the coach, leadership figure, athletic director, you can't let the kids get into, hey, every game, we're just going to be overly focused on what happened with the officiating, because you've got to have your eyes on, we do other things to win. Like, we've got to be better than that to win games. We can't be hyper-focused on officiating every single game or we will never win. You can let the fans do that, but you got to be focused on what you did. Your special teams blew it. Gave up a kick return touchdown on a night when Utah's defense was fabulous and BYU could not move the ball very much at all. You also still let BYU drive from inside their own 30 all the way down for the game-winning field goal after that. And you didn't score for 3 of 4 quarters. You scored all of your points in 1 quarter, nothing outside of that. That's a criticism that is legitimate after the game, not the officials. If you're the athletic director, I hate, like I said, the lack of leadership that this really shows. Players are not really out here popping off like this. If the players can hold it in because they know like they would get punished if they were to come out and say, well, this is all on the officials screwed us, blah, blah, blah. The players have the poise and composure to be able to do that, but Mark Harlan doesn't. Veteran athletic director, he made the point, hey, I've been doing this for 12 years. All right, well, these college football players have been playing for 1, 2, 3, 4 years. They're much younger. They kept their poise better than Mark Harlan did. It's not great leadership. I said one thing that was pointed out, I think it was the KSL guys that I was listening to after the game. They said that Scott Draper was at the game, who is the guy in charge of basically all things football at the Big 12. You can go directly talk to him. You don't even have to wait to get Yormark on the phone. You can go directly talk to him. It just, to quote Denzel Washington, and remember the Titans, attitude reflects leadership. Having that sort of attitude from the fan base, and then clearly the leader himself, to me, not a great a great showing for what the leadership is like there at Utah. And really, to me, one of the biggest things that this shows, I feel like this tirade and tantrum, more of a tantrum, I would call it, shows that there is a lot of doubt about the future of Utah football that is bubbling up. This has gone from, you think about how stable everybody involved with the Utah football program had to feel like the program was 2 years ago, coming off of the back-to-back Rose Bowl appearances, Pac-12 championships, Cam Rising still returning, Kyle Whittingham just doing it year in and year out, still thinking the Pac-12 was going to survive. The times were good, man. The times were good, and it felt this is where the Big Ten dreaming starts. Like, all right, this is going to be great. As things evolve in college football, we'll be taken care of. We're going to be in the top, whatever echelon winds up being. We are fine, baby. Now, 2 years later, you've had 2 years to try and develop a good backup plan at quarterback. It hasn't worked. Haven't been able to figure that out. You had to get rid of the offensive coordinator. You're still at the point where you can't score. You've lost 5 straight. You go to this new conference that you thumb your nose at, look down upon, and in year one, you are damn near last place in the conference. You can't find a way to win a game. You're losing to everybody. That's a lot of flux. Meanwhile, by the way, you've already named a head coach in waiting because presumably Kyle Whittingham is getting closer to riding off into the sunset. Don't know if that's going to be this year, next. Some of his comments over the summer certainly made it seem like it wasn't going to be too long when he was talking about a game scheduled in like 2027 or 28 and was like, basically insinuating like, yeah, I don't know if I would be there. So it doesn't seem like that part of the stability is going to be around much longer, which is Kyle Whittingham. So I don't know, is Morgan Scalley up for the task? Maybe, but you don't know. I'm a K-State fan. I know exactly what that position is like, replacing a legendary head coach and not knowing, hey, is the next guy going to be able to do it? Like, that's a very unnerving place to be. And that's creeping up closer as what Whittingham even has right now is starting to fall apart. And I would imagine I fell for this, that most Utah fans also fell for and thought, hey, this program is much more than just Cam Rising. Yeah, okay, if we don't have Cam Rising, it can still be a pretty good program. Maybe we won't be college football playoff good, but it should still be a pretty good program. Well, you're fighting for bowl eligibility, fighting and scrapping for dear life for bowl eligibility, by the way, without Cam Rising. And this is the second year. This should have been planned better for. It's not like this wasn't telegraphed that this could be a possibility. The guy has been hurt for a very long time. How you haven't been able to develop a better transition plan, some kind of plan at quarterback than what you have right now. It's not great. So there's a lot of instability suddenly within the Utah football program. Look, I guess the other point I would make, Kansas. Go look at Kansas from last year. That's Kansas. They won 9 games with a backup quarterback. They had a contingency plan for Jalen Daniels, who the previous year had been hurt a bunch. They figured it out. Utah's not been able to figure it out with multiple backup quarterbacks, 3 over the last 2 years. Nothing doing. That is a Kansas program that did it. So that makes this program not feel nearly as stable as it did before. It's fair to ask, as many of you asked when the Big 12 was looking at adding Gonzaga in basketball, hey, is Gonzaga just Mark Few? I mean, I know Dan Monson started the thing, but like, is it just Mark Few? If he left, would that fall apart? Would they be as much of a behemoth as they are? Fair to ask the same question about Utah football. If Kyle Whittingham leaves, is it just about Kyle Whittingham? He's the only guy that can win at this level when you're an established Power 5 program, Power 4 program. We'll see. We'll see. I feel like Mark Harlan bubbling over with that kind of performance at the mic is not just about that single game. This is a stressful time. This has not been the season we thought. We all thought we were better than this league, and we're getting our ass kicked in the Big 12. So, we look down at this league for adding schools like Houston last year, and Houston beat us. So what do we do now? We're losing to the Houstons of the world, and now we have a 50-50 call not go our way, and we lose a home game to our arch rival. I would tell you it says a lot about what is happening behind closed doors with the Utah football program right now.